October 14th, 2025. An object from beyond our solar system just started releasing poison into space, not randomly, at one exact distance from the Sun, like it was programmed. They're calling it 3I Atlas. But what if this thing was never a comet at all? Let me take you back to when this all started. When astronomers first spotted 3I Atlas, it looked like another piece of space rock drifting through the cosmos. Just another visitor from the vast emptiness between stars. But that's where the normal part of this story ends. Because 3I Atlas is only the third known interstellar object we've ever detected passing through our solar system. The third visitor from another star system. That alone makes it incredibly rare. Think about it. In all of human history, with all our telescopes pointing at the sky every single night, we've only confirmed 3 objects that came from outside our solar system. 3. That's how unusual this is. The first one was Oumuamua back in 2017. That weird cigar-shaped thing that accelerated in ways that didn't make sense. That one sparked years of debate. Scientists couldn't agree on what it was. Some said it was just a weird comet. Others pointed out that it behaved nothing like any comet we'd ever seen. It moved wrong. It reflected light in strange ways, and then it vanished into the darkness before we could get a closer look. That mystery never got solved. We still don't know what Oumuamua really was. Then came Borisov in 2019. That one acted more like a normal comet. It had a tail. It released gas as it got closer to the Sun. Scientists felt relieved. Finally, an interstellar object that made sense. Something that fit our models and equations. Something predictable. But now we have 3I Atlas. And this one is different in ways that are starting to make people very uncomfortable. When 3I Atlas first appeared in our detection systems, it was moving through space like any other distant object. Cold, silent, inactive. Just a dark chunk of matter from somewhere else. Astronomers logged it. They calculated its trajectory. They noted its speed and direction. Everything seemed routine at first, but then something changed. Something that shouldn't have happened the way it did. As 3I Atlas got closer to our Sun, it started to wake up. And when I say wake up, I mean it in the most literal and disturbing sense, because what happened next wasn't gradual. It wasn't a slow process of ice melting as the object warmed up. No, this thing activated, like someone flipped a switch. At one specific distance from the Sun, 3I Atlas suddenly started venting gas into space. Not just any gas. Hydrogen cyanide. One of the most lethal compounds known to science. The same chemical used in gas chambers. The same poison that shuts down your cell's ability to use oxygen. If you breathed this stuff, you'd be dead in minutes. And this object from another star system just started spraying it into the void. Now you might think this is normal for comets. After all, comets are basically dirty snowballs. When they get close to the Sun, the ice heats up, turns to gas, and creates those beautiful tails we see in the night sky. That's comet behavior. Except 3I Atlas didn't do this gradually. It didn't slowly start releasing gas as it warmed up over millions of miles. No, it stayed completely dormant, completely inactive, until it reached one exact distance. And then boom! Activity. Like crossing an invisible line in space triggered a response. Scientists noticed this immediately. The data was clear. There was a threshold, a specific point in space where 3I Atlas went from being a dead rock to an active gas-releasing object. And that's not how natural comets work. Natural comets don't have on-off switches. They don't wait for precise distances and then suddenly activate. They respond to heat gradually. The closer they get to the Sun, the more they warm up, the more gas they release. It's a smooth curve, a gradual increase. But 3I Atlas? It had a trigger point. When astronomers started analyzing the composition of the gas being released, that's when things got even stranger. Hydrogen cyanide. Yes, some comets release this compound. It's not unheard of. But the amount mattered, the concentration mattered, and the timing mattered most of all. Because when you look at the data, when you really examine what 3I Atlas was doing, you start to see a pattern that feels less like nature and more like design. Let's talk about what makes a normal comet behave the way it does. Comets are leftovers from when our solar system formed. They're made of ice, rock, and frozen gases. When they swing close to the Sun, solar radiation heats them up. The ice sublimates, meaning it turns directly from solid to gas without becoming liquid first. This creates pressure. The pressure releases the gas. The gas forms a cloud around the comet, called a coma. Solar wind pushes this gas away from the sun, creating the tail. It's physics. It's predictable. It's been happening for billions of years. But 3I Atlas came from outside our solar system. It formed around a different star. It's been traveling through the freezing darkness of interstellar space for who knows how long. Thousands of years, maybe millions. And during all that time, it would have been exposed to cosmic radiation. It would have been bombarded by high-energy particles. Its surface would have been altered, changed. Any volatile compounds on its surface would have been stripped away or chemically modified. This is called space weathering. And it means that interstellar objects should behave differently than regular comets from our own solar system. So when 3I Atlas suddenly started acting like a comet, that raised questions. When it started releasing gas at a specific trigger point, that raised more questions. And when scientists started comparing it to what they expected, the numbers didn't add up. The gas release was too strong for an object that should have had its surface compounds depleted by interstellar travel. The activation was too sudden for natural sublimation processes, and the chemical signature was too specific. Too concentrated. Then came the really weird part, the tail. Every comet has a tail when it gets active, but comet tails always point away from the sun. Always. That's because solar wind, the stream of charged particles flowing out from the sun, pushes the gas and dust away. It's like a cosmic breeze that always blows outward. So comet tails always point in the opposite direction from the sun. It's one of the most basic facts about comets. Except 3I Atlas had moments where its tail was pointing the wrong way, toward the sun. Astronomers noticed this in the imaging data. At certain times, the gas and dust being released from 3I Atlas appeared to be moving in a direction that didn't match solar wind patterns. It was subtle, not a complete reversal, but enough to be anomalous. Enough to make people start checking their instruments. Enough to make them wonder if they were seeing something that shouldn't be possible. Was it a measurement error? Maybe. Was it an artifact of how the images were processed? Possibly, or was it real? Was there something about 3I Atlas that was generating its own directed force? Something that was pushing gas in a specific direction, regardless of solar wind? Because if that's what was happening, then we're not talking about a comet anymore. We're talking about propulsion. We're talking about control. Now here's where things took a turn that nobody expected. NASA's Psyche spacecraft. You probably heard about Psyche. It's a mission sent to study a metal-rich asteroid. It launched in 2023. Its destination is the asteroid Psyche, which is basically a giant floating ball of metal in the asteroid belt. Scientists think it might be the exposed core of a planet that got smashed apart billions of years ago. It's valuable for understanding how planets form, how their cores develop. It's pure science. But here's the thing. Psyche's trajectory took it through a region of space where it could have observed 3I Atlas during a critical window. A window when 3I Atlas was doing something particularly strange, and during that exact window, Psyche went silent. Not completely offline, but its data transmission stopped. The telemetry that NASA usually receives, the constant stream of information about the spacecraft's status and observations, just stopped flowing for a period of time. When it came back online, NASA said it was a routine communication issue, a scheduled maintenance window. Nothing to worry about. Just technical stuff. But the timing was too perfect, too convenient, because that communication blackout happened right when Psyche would have had the best view of 3I Atlas doing whatever it was doing. Was it really just a technical issue? Maybe. Space missions have communication problems all the time. Spacecraft need maintenance. Systems need updates. It could have been completely innocent. But when you're dealing with an already mysterious object, and then the one spacecraft that could have given us detailed observations suddenly goes quiet at exactly the right moment, people start asking questions. People start wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was something that wasn't meant to be seen and NASA wasn't talking. They released a brief statement about the communication interruption. Very technical, very dry. Nothing that explained why it happened when it did. Nothing that addressed the timing. Just reassurance that everything was fine and the spacecraft was operating normally again. But the data from that observation window, the data that could have told us exactly what 3I Atlas was doing during those critical hours, That data was either never collected or it was never released. And that's when the speculation really started. Let me show you something that makes this even more unsettling. When astronomers track objects in space, they don't just look at them with optical telescopes. They use multiple instruments, radio telescopes, infrared sensors, spectrometers that break down light into its component wavelengths to determine chemical composition. And when they aimed all these instruments at 3I Atlas, they found more anomalies, the TIWI. Spectroscopic data showed something unusual. In the light reflecting off 3I Atlas, there were absorption lines that didn't quite match what you'd expect from a normal comet. Absorption lines are like fingerprints. When light passes through or reflects off a substance, certain wavelengths get absorbed based on the chemical elements present. It's how we know what distant stars are made of. It's how we analyze the composition of planets we'll never visit. And 3I Atlas had fingerprints that didn't completely match known comet compositions. There were hints of metals, trace signatures that suggested the presence of refined alloys. Now you might think metals in a comet are normal. Comets do contain metal particles, iron, nickel, other elements. But these signatures were different. They suggested a higher concentration, a more organized structure, almost like the object had a metallic core or framework underneath its icy exterior. And that's when people started using a word that makes mainstream scientists very uncomfortable. Artificial. Could 3I Atlas be artificial? Could it be something built rather than something formed naturally? The idea sounds crazy at first. An artificial object from another star system. Why would anyone send something like that? Why would it be releasing hydrogen cyanide? Why would it activate at a specific distance from our sun? But here's the thing. If you were an advanced civilization and you wanted to send probes to other star systems, you might disguise them as natural objects. You might coat them in ice and rock so they'd look like comets or asteroids. You might program them to activate only when they reached certain conditions, certain distances, certain temperatures, certain levels of stellar radiation. And if you wanted those probes to do something specific, you might have them release gases, maybe to slow down, maybe to adjust their trajectory, maybe to create a cloud that could protect delicate instruments from radiation, or maybe to signal, to mark their presence in a way that would be detected by anyone looking closely enough. Hydrogen cyanide would definitely get attention. It's distinctive. It's unusual in large quantities, and it's something that any civilization looking at the object would immediately notice and analyze. But let's not get too far into speculation. Let's stick with what we know, what we can verify, the facts that are on record. Because even without invoking artificial origins, 3I Atlas is strange enough to warrant serious concern. And that concern is growing, because as this object continues its journey through our solar system, it's not done surprising us. To really understand how weird 3I Atlas is, we need to compare it to a normal comet. So let's look at what normal comets do. Take Halley's Comet, probably the most famous comet in history. It swings by Earth every 76 years. It's been recorded since ancient times. Chinese astronomers wrote about it. Europeans painted it. It even appears in the Bayeux Tapestry from 1066. We know Halley's Comet very well. We've studied it for centuries, and we know exactly how it behaves. Halley's Comet starts showing activity when it's still very far from the Sun. As it gets closer, that activity gradually increases. The coma grows larger, the tail gets brighter, the gas release intensifies. It's a smooth progression. Scientists can predict exactly when Halley's Comet will start showing certain behaviors based on its distance from the Sun. They can calculate how bright it will get, how long its tail will be. It's all very mathematical, very predictable. Now compare that to 3I Atlas. This object showed no activity until it hit a specific distance. Then suddenly, massive gas release. The difference is stark. It's like comparing a light on a dimmer switch to a light with an on-off button. Halley's Comet is the dimmer. Gradual increase in brightness, smooth transition. 3I Atlas is the button, off, then on. Nothing in between. Another comparison. Comet Hale-Bopp. This one was visible to the naked eye for a record 18 months in the late 1990s. It was huge, bright, beautiful, and scientists tracked its activity for years before it got close to the Sun. They watched it slowly wake up. They measured the gradual increase in gas release. They documented how its coma expanded over time. Everything happened in a predictable sequence. Everything matched the models. But 3I Atlas? It defied the models. The amount of hydrogen cyanide it released was disproportionate to its size. The suddenness of activation was inconsistent with thermal models, and the directional anomalies in its tail were unexplained by standard comet physics. This wasn't just a weird comet. This was something that broke the patterns we've observed in every other comet we've ever studied. Now let's talk about something that's been bothering researchers: the response. Or more accurately, the lack of response. When Oumuamua was discovered, there was huge public interest. Scientists were all over the news. Papers were published. Debates were held. Everyone wanted to understand what this interstellar visitor was. The scientific community was excited, but also transparent. They shared data. They discussed theories. They admitted what they didn't know. With 3I Atlas, things feel different. The information flow has been more controlled, more restricted. There are fewer papers in the public domain, fewer press releases, fewer scientists willing to go on record with their observations. And when they do talk about it, there's a carefulness to their words, a hesitation, like they're being told what they can and cannot say. Why would that be? Why would there be less openness about 3I Atlas than there was about Oumuamua? One possibility is that they don't want to cause panic. If there's something truly unusual about this object, something that might suggest artificial origin or intentional behavior, maybe the decision was made to keep that information quiet until they understand it better, until they can explain it in a way that won't cause mass hysteria. Another possibility is that certain observations have been classified. If 3I Atlas is exhibiting behaviors that have military or national security implications, that data might be restricted. Governments don't like to admit they don't understand something in space, especially if that something might be intelligently controlled. The implications are too big, too destabilizing. There's also the question of what happens if they find something definitive. If they get data that proves beyond doubt that 3I Atlas is not natural, what then? Do they tell the public? Do they keep it secret? Do they try to communicate with it? These are questions nobody wants to face, because the answers could change everything we think we know about our place in the universe. Now I need to address something that's been circulating online, a conspiracy theory called Project Bluebeam. According to this theory, there's a plan to fake an alien invasion or alien contact using advanced holographic technology and psychological warfare. The goal, supposedly, is to unite the world under a single government by creating an external threat. A threat from space. Some people are suggesting that 3I Atlas might be part of this, that it's not really an interstellar object at all, that it's something we put there. They prop in an elaborate deception. The weird behaviors, the mysterious data blackouts, the controlled information flow, it all fits the pattern of a staged event. A false flag operation on a cosmic scale. Now, do I believe this? I don't know. It sounds far-fetched. The logistics of faking an interstellar object would be insane. You'd need to fool every major observatory on Earth, every space agency, every independent researcher. You'd need to somehow plant an object in space that has all the characteristics of coming from outside our solar system. The trajectory, the speed, the chemical composition. That's not easy to fake. But I'll say this. The existence of classified space programs is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. We know governments have secret satellites, secret missions, secret technologies. We know that information about space activities is sometimes restricted for national security reasons. So while faking an entire interstellar object seems unlikely, the idea that there's more going on than we're being told is not crazy. It's actually pretty reasonable. And here's where it gets interesting. There are laws about space communication, regulations about what information can be shared publicly about certain observations. If a government facility detects something unusual in space, something that might have implications for national security, they're not required to share that data with the public. In fact, they might be required to keep it secret. So even if scientists at public universities and observatories are sharing their data openly, there could be other observations, other data streams that we're not seeing. The question is, what would qualify as a national security concern? A strange comet probably wouldn't, but an object exhibiting intelligent control, an object that might be a probe from another civilization, An object that seems to be doing something purposeful in our solar system. Yeah, that would definitely qualify. Let's talk about something darker. The possibility that 3I Atlas could be weaponized. Not that it is a weapon, but that it could be used as one, or that someone might think it could be used as one. Because once you introduce the possibility that this object might be artificial, once you suggest that it might be under some form of control, the military implications become obvious. Imagine an object that can release toxic gases at specific points in space. Imagine if you could direct where those gases go. You'd have a delivery system, a way to deploy chemical agents in space, maybe to target satellites, maybe to create hazardous regions that spacecraft couldn't pass through, maybe to terraform areas of the solar system in ways that benefit you and harm others. Now that's speculation, pure speculation. We have no evidence that 3I Atlas is being controlled by anyone. We have no evidence that it's a weapon. But the fact that these questions can even be asked, the fact that the object's behavior is unusual enough to warrant this kind of thinking, that in itself is significant. Because it means we're in uncharted territory. We're dealing with something we don't fully understand. And that uncertainty creates opportunities for fear, misinterpretation, and potentially dangerous responses. If one nation believes 3I Atlas is a threat, they might want to do something about it. They might want to send a mission to intercept it, to study it, to neutralize it. And if another nation interprets that mission as an attempt to claim or weaponize the object, you've got a recipe for conflict. Space conflict. Which sounds like science fiction, but is becoming increasingly plausible as more nations develop space capabilities. Here's another angle that researchers are quietly discussing. What if 3I Atlas isn't alone? What if there are other interstellar objects in our solar system that we haven't detected? Objects that are dark, inactive, just drifting through. We've only found 3 confirmed interstellar objects, but that doesn't mean there are only 3. That means we've only confirmed 3. How many have we missed? Space is big, really big, and most objects in space don't reflect much light. If something is dark, if it's not releasing gas or creating a coma, if it's just a cold rock or ice ball, it's incredibly hard to spot. We only found Oumuamua because it passed close enough to Earth and reflected sunlight. We only found Borisov because it had a coma. We only found 3I Atlas because it activated. But what about the ones that don't activate? What about the ones that stay dark? Statistical models suggest that there should be thousands of interstellar objects passing through our solar system at any given time. Maybe more. These models are based on the density of matter in the galaxy and the probability of objects being ejected from other star systems. If those models are correct, then we're surrounded by visitors from other stars. We just can't see them. And that raises a disturbing question. If 3I Atlas is artificial, if it's a probe designed to activate under certain conditions, how many other probes might be out there? How many other objects might be watching, waiting, collecting data? We wouldn't know. We couldn't know. Unless they want us to know. Unless they activate. This is what keeps astronomers up at night. The things we can't see. The things that might be watching us right now. Because if even one interstellar object turns out to be artificial, it means we're not alone. It means someone else is out there. And they're here. In our solar system, close enough to observe, close enough to interact, close enough to matter. Let me walk you through the timeline of 3I Atlas, because when you see it laid out, the pattern becomes clearer. The object was first detected on January 17, 2025. At that point, it was far from the Sun, moving inward at about 40 kilometers per second. That's fast, way faster than objects native to our solar system. That speed is actually one of the indicators that it's from interstellar space. Objects bound to our Sun have predictable speeds based on their distance. But 3I Atlas was moving too fast to be bound. It was clearly a visitor. Passing through. For the first few months, nothing unusual happened. Astronomers tracked it. They calculated its orbit. They determined it would make its closest approach to the Sun in late September 2025. Then it would swing back out into deep space, never to return. Just a quick visit. A brief encounter with our star, before heading back into the darkness between stars. That was the plan. That's what the math said would happen. But on August 3rd, something changed. That's when 3I Atlas was approximately 3 astronomical units from the Sun. An astronomical unit is the distance between Earth and the Sun, about 93 million miles. So 3I Atlas was about 3 times farther from the Sun than we are. And at that exact distance it activated. Gas started flowing. The coma appeared. The tail formed, like someone hit a switch. Why 3 astronomical units? That's the question everyone started asking. There's nothing particularly special about that distance. It's not a resonance point with any planet's orbit. It's not a boundary layer in the solar wind. It's just a distance, an arbitrary number. Unless it's not arbitrary, unless that distance was chosen for a specific reason. Maybe because that's when solar radiation reaches a certain intensity. Maybe because that's when the object's sensors determined it was safe to begin operations. Maybe because that's when it was programmed to wake up. From August 3rd onward, 3I Atlas continued releasing hydrogen cyanide. The rate varied, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it never stopped completely. And as it got closer to the Sun, the intensity increased, but not smoothly, not gradually. There were spikes, sudden increases in gas release that didn't correspond to increases in solar heating, almost like the object was pulsing, like it was releasing gas in bursts rather than continuous flow. Then came the Psyche blackout, September 18th through September 21st, 3 days. Right when 3I Atlas was about 1.5 astronomical units from the Sun. Right when it was exhibiting those weird tail anomalies. Right when it would have been most interesting to observe. And Psyche went silent. Convenient timing. Too convenient. On October 1st, 3I Atlas made its closest approach to the Sun, about 1.2 astronomical units, closer to the Sun than Mars but farther than Earth. And at that point the gas release peaked. Maximum activity, maximum brightness, maximum weirdness. The spectroscopic data from that period showed the highest concentrations of unusual metallic signatures. The tail anomalies were most pronounced, and then as 3I Atlas started moving away from the Sun, heading back out into deep space, the activity started to decrease. But again, not smoothly, not gradually, in steps, like it was shutting down in stages. And that brings us to now, October 14th, 2025. 3I Atlas is still active, but less so. It's cooling down, returning to its dormant state. In a few months, it'll be too far from the Sun to observe clearly. It'll fade into the darkness, and we'll never see it again. It'll continue its journey through the galaxy, heading towards some destination we can't calculate, going somewhere we'll never know, carrying secrets we couldn't unlock, unless we do something about it. Unless we send a mission, unless we intercept it before it's too late. Which brings us to a crucial question. Should we go after it? Should we send a spacecraft to rendezvous with 3I Atlas, to study it up close, to maybe even bring samples back? Because if this object really is artificial, if it really is evidence of another civilization, then it's the most important discovery in human history. Nothing else comes close, not fire, not the wheel, not nuclear energy, not computers. This would be proof that we're not alone in the universe, and that proof is flying through our solar system right now. But there are problems. Big problems. First, 3I Atlas is moving fast. Really fast. Catching up to it would require a spacecraft with incredible velocity. We're talking about speeds we haven't achieved with current propulsion technology. We'd need something new, something experimental, and there's no time to develop it. By the time we built a spacecraft capable of reaching 3I Atlas, it would be too far away. Out of reach. Second, there's the danger. If 3I Atlas is releasing hydrogen cyanide, getting close to it could be fatal for any spacecraft with sensitive instruments. The gas could contaminate equipment, damage systems, and if we tried to land on it or collect samples, we'd be exposing our spacecraft to concentrated levels of a lethal toxin. That's not easy to protect against. Third, there's the question of permission. Who decides to send such a mission? The United States? Russia? China? The European Space Agency? This isn't a decision one nation can make alone. An interstellar object belongs to everyone. Or it belongs to no one. The legal framework for dealing with something like this doesn't really exist. We have treaties about the Moon, about planetary protection, but nothing about intercepting interstellar visitors that might be artificial. And fourth, there's the risk of provoking a response. If 3i Atlas is artificial, if it's a probe from another civilization, approaching it might trigger some kind of defensive reaction. Maybe it's programmed to protect itself. Maybe it's carrying information that's meant to be kept secure. Maybe interfering with it would be seen as an act of aggression by whoever sent it. We could accidentally start an interstellar incident. So the question isn't just, can we go after it? It's, should we? And nobody seems to have a good answer. One thing that's becoming increasingly clear is that there's a pattern of silence around 3i Atlas. Information is being controlled. Data is being limited. And the scientists who do speak about it publicly are very careful about what they say. This isn't how science usually works. Science is supposed to be open, transparent, peer-reviewed. But with 3i Atlas, there's a gatekeeping happening that feels unusual. That feels deliberate. Why? What are they protecting? Or who are they protecting? Is it us? Are they trying to prevent panic by withholding information that would be disturbing? Or are they protecting themselves? Covering up mistakes? Hiding observations that don't fit their preferred narrative? Or maybe, and this is the scenario that's most concerning, maybe they're protecting the object. Maybe they've been told not to interfere, not to reveal too much, not to draw attention to something that someone somewhere wants to keep quiet. Because if 3i Atlas really is artificial, if it really is from another intelligence, then the implications go way beyond science. They touch on philosophy, religion, power, control, the very foundation of how we see ourselves in the universe. And those are the kinds of things that governments don't like being challenged. Those are the kinds of things that institutions fight to control. Because if people start questioning everything, or if people start realizing that we might not be alone, that there might be others out there who are more advanced than us, more powerful than us, watching us, that changes everything. And change, especially rapid, unexpected change, is dangerous to those in power. Let's bring this back to us, to humanity, because ultimately that's what this is about. Not just a weird object in space, but what it means for us, what it means for our future, our understanding of reality, our place in the cosmos. For thousands of years, humans have looked at the stars and wondered, are we alone? Is there anyone else out there? We've built myths around this question, religions, philosophies. We've imagined aliens as gods, as demons, as saviors, as threats. We've sent messages into space, hoping someone would hear. We've listened with giant radio telescopes, hoping someone would answer. And mostly we've heard silence, the great silence of the universe, the absence of anyone else. But what if that silence was never real? What if they've been here all along, just watching, observing, waiting? What if objects like 3i Atlas are the answer to our question? Not the answer we wanted, not a clear message or a friendly greeting, but an answer nonetheless, evidence, proof, something real and tangible that says, yes, you are not alone. Others exist. And they're here. How would that change us? Would it unite humanity? Give us a common purpose? A shared sense of wonder? Or would it divide us? Create fear? Competition for resources and information? Would we rise to the occasion? Or would we crumble under the weight of such a revelation? These are questions we might need to answer soon, because 3i Atlas isn't the last interstellar object we'll encounter. It's just the third we've confirmed. There will be others, and as our detection methods improve, as our telescopes get better, as we build more instruments and watch the sky more carefully, we'll find more. We'll see more. We'll discover more things that don't fit, more anomalies, more mysteries, and each one will bring us closer to a truth that we might not be ready for, a truth that will rewrite everything we thought we knew. A truth that's been drifting through our solar system all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to notice. Here's something most people don't know about. There are laws governing what information can be shared about space observations, particularly observations that might relate to national security or have strategic implications. These laws vary by country, but they all serve the same purpose: to control the flow of sensitive information. In the United States, for example, any observations made by military or intelligence satellites are automatically classified. Even if those satellites observe something of scientific interest, like an interstellar object, the data goes through a review process before it can be released to the scientific community. This process can take months, sometimes years. Sometimes the data is never released at all. Other countries have similar regulations: Russia, China, India. Any nation with a space program has rules about what information can be shared and when. And these rules get particularly strict when the observations involve something unusual, something that can't be immediately explained, something that might be a threat. So when we talk about 3I Atlas, when we discuss what we know and what we don't know, we have to factor in these restrictions. There might be observations we're not seeing, data that's been collected but not released, images that are sitting in classified databases. And the scientists who have access to this information can't talk about it. They're bound by non-disclosure agreements, by security clearances, by laws that carry serious penalties for violation. This creates a situation where the public narrative about 3I Atlas might be incomplete. Not because scientists are lying, but because they're not allowed to tell the whole truth. They can share some data, they can discuss some observations, but the really interesting stuff, the really anomalous stuff, that might be locked away, restricted, classified as need to know, and who decides what we need to know? Not scientists, not even elected officials in most cases. It's military officers, intelligence analysts, people whose job is to protect national security, not to advance human knowledge, people who err on the side of secrecy rather than transparency. So where does that leave us? What do we do with all of this information? All these questions? All this uncertainty? 3I Atlas is real. It's out there right now, moving through our solar system. It activated at a specific distance. It released poison gas. It exhibited anomalous behaviors. It disappeared from observation during a critical window. And now it's fading back into the darkness, taking its secrets with it. Is it natural? Is it artificial? Is it dangerous? We don't have definitive answers, and that might be the point. Because the universe doesn't owe us answers. It doesn't care about our need for certainty. It just is. And sometimes the most profound mysteries are the ones that remain unsolved. The questions that keep us searching, keep us wondering, keep us looking up at the night sky with a mixture of awe and fear. But here's what we do know. For the first time in recorded history, we're observing objects from other star systems passing through our cosmic neighborhood. These aren't theoretical anymore. They're real, measurable, observable, and each one teaches us something new. Each one challenges our assumptions. Each one reminds us how little we actually understand about the universe we live in. 3I Atlas is strange. There's no getting around that. Its behavior doesn't fit neatly into our models. Its chemical signatures raise more questions than they answer. Its timing, its activation, its anomalies, all of it suggests something we haven't encountered before. Whether that something is natural or artificial, whether it's random or intentional, whether it's benign or threatening, we simply don't know yet. But not knowing isn't the same as ignoring. Not knowing isn't the same as forgetting, because 3I Atlas has given us something valuable, even without definitive answers. It's given us proof that the universe is stranger than we imagined, that there are phenomena out there we haven't categorized, objects we haven't explained, behaviors we haven't predicted, and that should excite us. It should motivate us to build better telescopes, design better instruments, ask better questions, because the next interstellar visitor might be even more unusual. It might give us the breakthrough we need. The data we've been waiting for. The proof that finally settles the ancient question that's haunted humanity since we first gained consciousness and looked up at the stars. Are we alone? Maybe 3I Atlas is the beginning of that answer. Maybe it's a test, a probe sent by an intelligence that wants to see if we're paying attention, if we're advanced enough to notice, if we're curious enough to investigate. Or maybe it's just a rock, a chunk of ice and dust that happened to behave in unusual ways for reasons we'll eventually understand through better science and more data. But either way, it matters. Either way, it changes something fundamental about how we see ourselves, because we've now confirmed that objects from other star systems visit us regularly. They pass through our solar system. They interact with our sun. They leave traces we can study. And if they can come here, then we can go there someday. When our technology advances enough, when we figure out how to travel between stars, and when we do finally venture out into the galaxy, when we send our own probes to other star systems, maybe we'll understand 3I Atlas better. Maybe we'll realize that what we're doing is what they did, sending objects into the unknown, programming them to activate at specific conditions, hoping that someone somewhere might notice, might study them, might wonder about their origin, Maybe every civilization that reaches our level of development goes through this phase. This moment of discovery, where they realize the universe is full of visitors, full of mysteries, full of objects that don't quite make sense. And maybe that's how contact works. Not through dramatic first encounters or obvious messages, but through subtle anomalies, strange behaviors, objects that make you question everything you thought you knew. That would be elegant in a way. Contact through curiosity, rather than confrontation. Connection through mystery rather than clarity. A universe where the answers are hidden in plain sight, waiting for species to become advanced enough to notice, patient enough to observe, humble enough to admit what they don't understand. There's something profound happening here that goes beyond the science. Beyond the measurements and the data and the observations, we're confronting a philosophical crisis, a crisis of understanding. Because if 3i Atlas is artificial, if it's proof of another intelligence, then every philosophy, every religion, every system of meaning we've constructed has to be re-evaluated. We're not the center of creation. We're not alone. We're not special. We're just one species among potentially billions, one civilization among countless others, one tiny experiment in consciousness floating through an ocean of similar experiments. That's hard to accept. It's hard to internalize. For thousands of years, we've built our worldviews around the assumption that we're unique, that Earth is special, that humanity is the pinnacle of creation, that if there's meaning in the universe, it centers on us, our struggles, our achievements, our story. But what if we're just background noise? What if the universe is so full of life, so saturated with intelligence, that we're utterly unremarkable? What if 3i Atlas is routine? Just another probe from just another civilization doing what civilizations do? Exploring, observing, cataloging. What if we're being studied the way we study ants? With mild interest but no real investment. No sense that we matter in any cosmic sense. That's a terrifying thought. But it's also liberating. Because if we're not special, if we're not the center of everything, then we're free. Free to make mistakes, free to learn, free to grow without the pressure of cosmic significance. We can just be, just exist, just do our best without worrying that the fate of the universe depends on us. And maybe that's the real message of 3i Atlas. Not that we're in danger, not that we're being watched, but that we're part of something bigger, something so vast and complex that we can barely perceive it. A galaxy full of life, a universe full of intelligence, a cosmic story that's been unfolding for billions of years and will continue for billions more with or without us. That's humbling. But humility is what we need right now. Humility to admit we don't have all the answers. Humility to accept that we might be wrong about fundamental things. Humility to approach the universe with curiosity rather than arrogance, with wonder rather than fear. If 3i Atlas is artificial, there's another uncomfortable reality we need to face. The technology gap. Whoever built it, whoever sent it, they're ahead of us. Maybe by decades, maybe by centuries, maybe by millennia, because we can't do what 3i Atlas is doing. We can't send objects to other star systems. We can't program them to activate at specific conditions. We can't even get beyond our own solar system in any meaningful way. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, our most distant spacecraft, launched in 1977. They're now in interstellar space, beyond the influence of our sun, but they're moving at about 17 kilometers per second. At that speed, it would take them 70,000 years to reach the nearest star. 70,000 years. That's longer than recorded human history, and those spacecraft are dead. No power, no communications, just metal shells drifting through the void. 3i Atlas, on the other hand, traveled here from another star system and still had enough power or functionality to activate, to release gas, to perform whatever operations it was designed to perform. That's a level of engineering we can't match. That's a level of thinking we haven't achieved. Long-term planning on timescales we can barely imagine. Reliability over distances that make our best efforts look like crude experiments. And if they can do that, what else can they do? If they can send probes across light years, what kind of energy do they have access to? What kind of materials? What kind of computation? What kind of understanding of physics? Are they manipulating gravity? Bending space? Using dimensions we haven't discovered? Operating on principles we haven't conceived? The gap could be unbridgeable. We might be like Stone Age humans trying to understand a smartphone. We can see it. We can observe what it does, but we lack the framework to comprehend it. We don't have the concepts, the language, the mathematics. Here it's not that we're stupid, it's that we're at a different level of development, a different stage of cognitive evolution, and that gap creates danger, not necessarily from them, but from us. Because when one civilization encounters another that's more advanced, history shows us what happens. The less advanced civilization doesn't usually fare well. Either through conquest, exploitation, or cultural assimilation, they lose something. Sometimes they lose everything. Now maybe that doesn't apply to interstellar contact. Maybe civilizations advanced enough to travel between stars are also wise enough not to exploit or dominate. Maybe they've evolved beyond such primitive impulses, or maybe they haven't. Maybe competition and dominance are universal principles. Maybe the strong always dominate the weak, regardless of the scale. We don't know. We can't know until we meet them, and by then, it might be too late to prepare. Let's consider another possibility that researchers are discussing in private conversations. What if 3i Atlas isn't just passing through? What if it's surveilling us, watching, recording, collecting data about Earth, about humanity, about our level of development, our technology, our behavior? If you wanted to study a civilization from space, how would you do it? You'd need to get close enough to resolve details, close enough to pick up electromagnetic signals, close enough to analyze atmospheric composition and detect industrial activity. And you'd want to do it without being obvious, without causing panic or triggering defensive responses. So you'd disguise your probe as something natural. A comet, an asteroid, something that belongs in space. Something that wouldn't raise immediate alarm, and you'd program it to activate only when conditions were right, when it was close enough to gather useful data, but not so close that it would be immediately recognized as artificial. 3 astronomical units. That's where 3i Atlas activated. From that distance, you could observe Earth. You could detect our radio signals, our satellite networks, our military installations. You could build a detailed picture of human civilization without ever being noticed as a threat. The hydrogen cyanide release? Maybe that's not about propulsion or signaling. Maybe it's about creating a cloud, a gaseous envelope that could hide instruments. That could absorb certain wavelengths of radiation while transmitting others. That could serve as both camouflage and communication medium. The tail anomalies. Maybe those aren't anomalies at all. Maybe they're directed emissions, targeted transmissions back to wherever 3i Atlas came from. Sending data, sending reports, sending everything it learned about us, and the Psyche blackout. Maybe that wasn't a technical failure. Maybe Psyche got too close. Maybe its instruments detected something they weren't supposed to detect. And maybe something made sure that data never reached Earth, or at least never reached the public. This is speculation. I want to be clear about that. We have no proof of surveillance, no evidence of directed observation. But the behaviors exhibited by 3i Atlas are consistent with this scenario. And if it's true, if we're being watched, then every assumption we have about first contact needs to be re-evaluated, because first contact might have already happened. We just didn't recognize it. So what do? How do we respond to something we don't understand? How do we react to an object that might be natural, might be artificial, might be benign, might be dangerous? Do we ignore it? Study it from a distance? Try to intercept it? Prepare for possibilities we can't even articulate? Different groups have different answers. The scientific community wants more data, more observations, better instruments. They want to study 3i Atlas carefully, methodically, without jumping to conclusions. That's the rational approach. The measured response. Don't panic. Don't speculate. Just collect information and analyze it objectively. The military establishment sees it differently. They see a potential threat, an unknown object exhibiting unusual behaviors in our solar system. Their job is to protect, to defend, to neutralize threats before they become critical. So they want contingency plans, response protocols, ways to deal with scenarios that range from benign to catastrophic. The public, the few who are paying attention, they're divided. Some people are excited, fascinated. They see 3i Atlas as evidence that we're not alone, that the universe is full of wonders, that humanity is on the verge of a new era. Others are scared, worried. They see potential danger, invasion, extinction, the end of civilization as we know it, and governments. They're trying to manage all of this, trying to balance transparency with security, trying to keep people informed without causing panic, trying to make decisions about something they don't fully understand with incomplete information and enormous stakes. It's an impossible situation. There's no playbook for this. No historical precedent. No clear right answer. Every choice involves risks. Every decision could be wrong, and the consequences of being wrong could be catastrophic. So they delay. They study. They debate. They form committees and task forces and working groups. They commission reports and studies and analyses. And while they're doing all of this, 3i Atlas keeps moving, keeps drifting farther away, keeps taking its secrets with it. But here's the thing. 3i Atlas won't be the last. It's just the third we've confirmed. There will be a fourth, a fifth, a 100th. Interstellar objects are out there. They're always passing through. We're just getting better at spotting them. And each one will be an opportunity, a chance to learn, a chance to confirm or deny our theories about 3i Atlas. If the next interstellar object behaves normally, if it acts like a regular comet or asteroid, then maybe 3i Atlas was just an anomaly, a one-off, a natural object with unusual properties that we didn't understand. Case closed. Mystery solved. No aliens, no probes. Just weird space rocks doing weird space rock things. But if the next one also exhibits strange behaviors, if it also activates at specific distances, if it also releases unusual gases, if it also has metallic signatures that don't quite fit, then we have a pattern. And patterns are significant. Patterns suggest intention, design, purpose, and that's when things get real. That's when we can no longer dismiss these objects as anomalies. That's when we have to face the possibility that something is out there, something that's been there all along, something that's watching us, studying us, waiting for us to notice. The question is, are we ready for that? Are we ready to live in a universe where we're not alone? Where we're being observed? Where our every move might be documented by intelligences we can't see, can't communicate with, can't understand? Some people say yes. We've been dreaming about alien contact for generations. We've written stories about it, made movies about it, fantasized about it. We're ready. Bring it on, but I'm not so sure. Because knowing something intellectually and experiencing it emotionally are very different things. We can say we're ready for alien contact. We can prepare protocols and plans. But when it actually happens, when we have undeniable proof that we're not alone, that changes everything. Every religion, every philosophy, every sense of meaning and purpose, all of it gets questioned. All of it gets reevaluated. And humans don't handle that kind of fundamental disruption well. We like stability. We like certainty. We like knowing where we stand in the universe. When that certainty gets taken away, when the ground shifts beneath our feet, we tend to panic. We tend to fight. We tend to make bad decisions out of fear and confusion. Let's go back to the hydrogen cyanide, because there's something about that detail that keeps bothering me. Of all the gases 3i Atlas could release, why hydrogen cyanide? Why something so immediately recognizable as toxic? Why something that would grab attention and raise alarm? If this object is natural, if it's just a comet, then the hydrogen cyanide is just chemistry, just molecules that happen to exist in frozen form on the object's surface. When heated by the sun, they sublimate and get released. There's no intention, no meaning. There's just physics. But if 3i Atlas is artificial, if someone designed it, then the choice of gas matters. Hydrogen cyanide is distinctive. It has a strong spectroscopic signature. Any civilization looking at the object would immediately detect it and recognize it as toxic, as dangerous, as something that shouldn't be approached casually. So maybe that's the point. Maybe it's a warning, a way of saying stay back, a deterrent meant to keep curious civilizations from getting too close, from trying to land on the object or collect samples, from interfering with whatever mission it's performing. Or maybe it's a test, a way of determining how advanced a civilization is. If you can detect hydrogen cyanide from a distance, if you can analyze its chemical signature, if you understand its toxicity, then you've reached a certain level of development. You have telescopes, spectrometers, knowledge of chemistry. You're worth paying attention to, or maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm reading meaning into something that has no meaning. Maybe hydrogen cyanide just happens to be present on this particular object for completely mundane reasons. Maybe I'm falling into the trap of seeing patterns where none exist. over-attributing intention to randomness. That's the problem with mysteries like this. You can interpret the data in multiple ways. You can construct narratives that fit the facts. But narratives aren't proof. Stories aren't evidence, and until we have definitive information, until we can rule out natural explanations completely, we're just speculating. But speculation is how science starts. It's how we form hypotheses, how we design experiments, how we push the boundaries of knowledge. So even if I'm wrong, even if 3i Atlas turns out to be completely natural, the questions I'm asking matter. The thought processes matter. Because they prepare us for the next mystery, the next anomaly, the next object that doesn't quite fit. One of the most frustrating aspects of the 3i Atlas situation is the silence from authoritative sources. NASA hasn't issued comprehensive statements. The European Space Agency has been quiet. Major universities that should be leading the investigation seem reluctant to commit to strong positions. And that silence is deafening. In the past, when unusual space phenomena occurred, there was usually robust scientific discourse. Papers got published quickly. Researchers debated openly. The scientific process played out in public view. But with 3i Atlas, that normal process seems muted, controlled, managed. Why? What's different this time? Is it because the anomalies are too severe? Because they can't explain what they're seeing and don't want to admit it? Is it because they've been advised to stay quiet pending further investigation? Is it because they know something they're not sharing? The cynical interpretation is that there's a coordinated effort to suppress information, that governments have intervened, that scientists have been told what they can and cannot say, that the full truth about 3i Atlas is being kept from the public for reasons of national security or social stability. The more charitable interpretation is that scientists are being careful, that they don't want to make claims they can't support, that the data is complex and requires thorough analysis before any conclusions can be drawn, that they're following proper scientific protocol, even if it means slower information flow. Both interpretations could be partially true. Science moves slowly by design. Peer review takes time. Replication takes time. Building consensus takes time. But there's also no doubt that information about space observations can be restricted, can be classified, can be controlled by entities that have interests beyond pure science. So we're left in a state of uncertainty, waiting for more information, hoping for clarity, but not really expecting it. Because if the truth about 3i Atlas is genuinely extraordinary, if it really is evidence of something that challenges our fundamental understanding of reality, then that truth will be resisted. It'll be questioned. It'll be suppressed by institutions that have invested heavily in the current paradigm. That's how paradigm shifts work. They don't happen smoothly. They don't happen with consensus. They happen through conflict, through resistance, through gradual acceptance of evidence that can no longer be denied. And we might be in the early stages of such a shift right now. The evidence is accumulating. The anomalies are piling up, and at some point, the weight of that evidence will become undeniable. Let's talk about what this means on a personal level, on a human level. Because all of this, all the science and speculation and mystery, it ultimately comes down to us, to individual people trying to make sense of reality, trying to understand our place in the cosmos, trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with information that might change everything. If 3i Atlas is natural, life goes on. The universe remains mysterious but ultimately comprehensible. We'll study the object, learn from it, add it to our catalogue of cosmic phenomena, and we'll move forward with our lives, our plans, our assumptions about reality intact. But if 3i Atlas is artificial, everything changes, not just scientifically, not just philosophically, but personally, because you'll wake up every morning knowing that we're not alone, that someone else is out there, that they've been here, that they're watching, and that knowledge will color everything. Every decision, every plan, every hope and fear. How do you live with that? How do you maintain normalcy when the fundamental nature of reality has shifted? How do you care about mundane things like jobs and relationships and bills when you know that somewhere out there, there's an intelligence that might see you as insignificant, as primitive, as disposable? These aren't easy questions. They're existential questions, the kind that philosophers have wrestled with for centuries. But they've always been abstract, theoretical. Now they might be concrete, real, urgent, and different people will respond differently. Some will find it liberating, exciting, a validation that there's more to existence than our small lives on our small planet. Others will find it terrifying, destabilizing, a threat to everything they believe and value. And most people will probably feel both things at once, excited and terrified, curious and scared, drawn forward and pulled back. That's the human condition. That's what makes us remarkable. We can hold contradictory feelings simultaneously. We can be rational and emotional, scientific and spiritual, brave and afraid, and we'll need all of those qualities if we're going to navigate whatever comes next. So here we are. October 14th, 2025. 3i Atlas continues its journey through our solar system, moving farther from the sun with each passing day. Its activity is decreasing. Its mysteries remain unsolved, and we're left with more questions than answers. Is it natural? Probably. Most things in space are natural. Most anomalies have mundane explanations once you collect enough data and apply enough intelligence. The universe is weird, but it usually follows rules, usually makes sense eventually, but that probably is important, because it's not definitely, it's not certainly, there's still doubt, still uncertainty, still room for the extraordinary. And that room, that possibility, that's what keeps us looking, that's what drives exploration. That's what makes mysteries like 3i Atlas so compelling. We might never know for sure what 3i Atlas really is. It might vanish into the darkness with its secrets intact. But it's given us something valuable regardless. It's reminded us that the universe is full of surprises, full of phenomena we haven't categorized, full of objects that challenge our understanding. And it's shown us that we're getting better at observing, better at detecting, better at analyzing. Each interstellar visitor we find teaches us how to find the next one. Each anomaly we document helps us understand what's normal and what's not. We're learning, evolving, becoming a civilization that can meaningfully study not just our own solar system, but the objects that pass through it from beyond. That's progress, real progress. And whether 3i Atlas is a probe from an alien civilization or just a weird comet from another star system, it's contributing to that progress. It's pushing us forward, making us ask better questions, building better instruments, thinking more carefully about what we're seeing and what it means. So maybe the answer isn't the point. Maybe the mystery itself is the gift, the motivation to keep searching, keep questioning, keep looking up at the night sky and wondering what else is out there, what other visitors are passing through, what other messages are written in the movement of objects so distant they're barely visible. Because one thing is certain, 3i Atlas won't be the last mystery we encounter. It's just one in an infinite series of cosmic puzzles that we'll spend the rest of human history trying to solve. And that's beautiful. That's meaningful. That's what makes existence worth experiencing. The universe is speaking to us in hydrogen cyanide and spectroscopic signatures, in anomalous trajectories and mysterious activations, in objects that come from beyond our solar system, carrying evidence of processes we don't fully understand. We just need to learn the language, develop the literacy, build the understanding necessary to translate what we're seeing into knowledge we can use, and we will, eventually, because that's what humans do. We observe. We analyze. We theorize. We test. We learn, slowly, imperfectly, but relentlessly. We keep pushing against the boundaries of ignorance. Keep expanding the sphere of knowledge. Keep reaching for understanding, even when it seems impossibly distant. Atlas is out there right now, moving through space at 40 kilometers per second, carrying its mysteries toward some destination we can't calculate, heading back into the darkness between stars. And maybe millions of years from now it'll reach another solar system, another planet with another civilization, and they'll detect it, study it, wonder about it, ask the same questions we're asking now. What is this thing? Where did it come from? What does it mean? And maybe they'll find the answer. Or maybe they'll add their own questions to the list, their own observations to the mystery. And the object will continue its journey, accumulating meaning with each civilization it encounters, becoming not just a physical object but a cosmic story, a tale written across star systems and eons, a message that transcends any single interpretation. That's the real legacy of 3i Atlas, not whatever it is, but what it represents. The eternal mystery of existence, the questions that drive us forward, The wonder that makes us human. The answer may be older than civilization itself. Subscribe for more cosmic mysteries.